Okay, guys. I hope that you can see and hear me now. Sorry for the delay. Just trying to see myself and my presentation also, so that I'm not just talking without seeing my own presentation. Okay. But I think now we are so far. Okay, so sorry for letting you wait, but switching from the workshop to the guest talk, there was some technical changes and also a physical room change involved. So I'm sorry for the delay. I hope I can make it up with an interesting talk now. Thank you very much, first of all, for the presentation and giving me the possibility to show my recent research and also to present me and my artistic work. I would like in this presentation take a look on different smart spaces, smart homes, smart cities, and would also like to show you a research project that I started and was doing in South Korea in the past 2 years. And there will also be like a video that I will show you about the role of the citizen in the future city environments. So briefly about myself and the background about myself. So my name is Andreas Zingerle. I'm a designer and a researcher. I'm originally from Austria and I live in Bergen since about a year. I collaborate in an artistic art and research collective called Kairos, together with my wife, Linda Kronman. She is working at the University of Bergen as a researcher in the machine vision research project, which is part of the Department of Linguistics and Digital Culture. And together we have been working since over 10 years in art collective and done several installations, exhibitions, artist in residencies, and so on. I studied at the University of Art and Design in Linz. The department is called Interface Cultures, and also did exchange semesters to the Aalto University in Helsinki, or also the Erasmus Plus programs to the Bilgi University in Istanbul or to the University of Bergen. My research interest is in speculative fictions, in e-waste, in general the smartification in terms of the Internet of Things and smart cities that I will present most of it today. I'm also very interested in the free and libre open source communities. For example, in Linz, I was involved in Servus.at, which is an artist-run data center in Linz. They also organize a festival every 2 years. And I'm very happy to collaborate with Pixel here in Bergen and do with you guys together the digital challenge and also work on different open source tools and see how they can be used in the teaching and online teaching, online exhibitions, these kind of topics. I'm also exploring and experiencing more and more and find quite interesting. In general, digital art and new forms of human-computer interaction were not just my focus point during my studies, but also during my PhD studies, where I was focusing on online communities and internet crime, and also the illegal e-waste trade. Over the years, I did several artist-in-residence programs in different countries. During a time when I was living in Rotterdam, I was doing a residency in Austria at a festival called Schmiede in Salzburg, but was also doing residencies in Beijing, in China, in West Africa, in Ghana, in South Korea, mainly in Seoul. And some of the projects that I will present to you were also developed during this artist in residency time. So to give you an overview on the smart lifestyle, smart spaces, smart homes, smart cities, in general, the smartification and the Internet of everything. I was talking with some of your colleagues and students, and they requested also a general introduction to smart homes and smart cities. That's why I also put some introduction slides to the topic. So to define some, to have some definitions in the beginning, so that we all know what we are talking about, is I start with a smart home. A smart home can be seen as an automation system that controls the lighting, the climate, the entertainment system, and various appliances within your home. It can also include home security, such as alarm systems, video surveillance, and so on. When this automation system is connected to the internet, these devices communicate with each other, exchange data to the cloud most of the time, and become and form this Internet of Things. The early home automation began in the 1900s with the introduction of electric power and with water heaters, the washing machine, different appliances, sewing machine, dishwasher, and so on. What we have nowadays is, of course, a further development of it, which can be put together as the Internet of Things, is this system of interrelated devices that all have unique identifiers, so they have own addresses that can be identified through the internet, and they have the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring that humans or the human-computer interaction. So they can work autonomously. The definition has also evolved over the years, and especially through the convergence of multiple technologies and of real-time data analytics, machine learning, different sensors that are built into these systems. They constantly evolve and are more embedded systems in our living environment, also called the ubiquitous computing. So in the consumer market, this IoT technology is more or less a synonym for the concept of the smart home. And as we will see, there are different examples for thermostats, home security, lighting things, cameras, and they are controlled via different devices. So mostly they are designed to be managed, maintained with a smartphone, with a tablet, or also with a smart loudspeaker. So here, just as a representative image of some of these devices, the smart fridge is one of the ongoing examples, best-selling examples of the IoT. But of course, over the years, we have experienced a lot of other quite successful examples, like the video surveillance doorbell, the Google Ring, or different surveillance cameras, observation tablets where you can see your sensor data visualized for you, different smart power sockets that you can turn on and off appliances remotely just by turning the power on and off. The Roomba, like a automated robot vacuum cleaner, or different lighting systems where you can create ambient lighting situations for your house, for your. So here another overview where we can see what is going on within a house. So you see the radiator thermostats, very well-known appliance for this would be the Google Nest, where you can also see where you can adjust thermostats. It learns the heating elements, it learns your routines and your rhythms when you enter or exit your house, how warm you want to have it in general in different rooms and so on. Then different doors and windows with sensors. As I said already, remote adapters and dimmers for turning on and off devices. Outdoor motion detectors that goes along with a certain surveillance, but also just turning on lights and so on. So there are a lot of different sensors that get used in appliances. Of course, there are like thousands of startups that work in this direction. Here is just an overview of some of them. It's a huge market in the end, and there are lots of smaller and bigger ideas getting reworked into different services and sensor appliances. All in all, it's considered to be an explosion of connected possibilities that the Internet of Things provides to us. And more devices are getting connected to the Internet to exchange data and to collect sensor information. Of course, with this huge market, there is also a kind of a war going on between certain input devices, most notable the Amazon Echo and the Google Home, two quite well-known smart speakers that can be used to get to navigate within these different IoT devices. So you have a voice command enabled device that you can then use to ask for different sensor data or set certain devices in certain modes, or just turn on the radio, see what is your calendar, or what is the weather forecast, in a way, by just talking to these devices. Of course, the smart home is just the small scale version of a smart city. So in the end, you can scale it up, ramp it up, and say what works on in my apartment can also work within a house, within a street, within a city. That a lot of sensors and communication technologies are implemented on a city scale in order to give possibilities for better, efficient monitoring and surveillance of. So to define the smart city as an urban area that uses different types of IoT sensors, Internet of Things enabled devices that collect data and use this data, this big data analytics to manage certain resources or services within the city scale more efficiently. So this includes the data collection from citizens, from the devices, maybe the smartphones that they use, or maybe certain devices that they have in their apartments or in their houses, and processes and analyzes this data for monitoring and all different types of systems. So there are transportation systems for power efficiency, water supply, waste management is a big part also, and of course crime detection. But also you see these city scale implementations to for other information systems in schools, libraries, hospitals, and in just every aspect of different community services. So here you see an overview also on the different in what kind of surroundings the smart cities have can be integrated. So just pretty much any aspect of life can have a positive influence through the implementation of smart city applications. And often main arguments strive towards the to enrich the quality of life, the culture and well-being, health and safety, but also that on a society level it becomes more inclusive, society becomes more creative, a happier society, because everything can be better monitored, if more handled more efficiently, and more sustainable in a way. So many promotion materials, we see that city officials have the possibility to interact directly with the community and the city infrastructure to see what is happening in the city and to also see the evolving of the city. This is often done in so-called control rooms, and when you see all the different overviews and statistics that they can get from a city, it kind of resembles like a SimCity environment where you are in a God mode and can observe and manage all these different processes and protocols of what is going on in real time in the city. So you can enhance the quality, the performance, and the interactivity of urban services, reduce costs and resources, and in the best case, increase the contact between citizen and their government. The applications are developed to manage the urban flows, and real-time responses are a key keyword for this. So the smart city may therefore be more prepared to respond to the challenges that one with a simple transactional relationship with its citizens has. So it's, to a certain degree, it remains unclear what are the specifics of a smart city, and they are very open to a lot of interpretations. So when we see at, like, nowadays, I have the feeling that every city wants to call itself being a smart city, but the definitions are very different, or it's, yeah, it can be the fuzzy term gets used in a PR way by different cities in a different way. In the research that I was doing in South Korea, I was mainly looking at cities that are built entirely from scratch. And I put the quote here from Bill Gates also, because this is one of the benefits that you can also see when you look at these scratch cities. So designing an entirely new city from the ground up provides a unique opportunity to create an ideal technological infrastructure. And since in my studies I was also focusing on interface cultures and human-computer interaction, of course, this becomes then a very interesting aspect why I am looking at the interaction possibilities that citizens have with their living environment. Our cities are fast transforming into ecosystems of interconnected, independent, intelligent digital organisms. This quote from William Mitchell you also find in similar ways in a lot of the PR material that I was analyzing from different companies, how they are promoting their smart city initiatives. So a couple of years ago, I was visiting the Smart City Expo in Barcelona. It's the biggest expo on the topic of smart cities in the world. And they have a yearly conference section where cities and also on the other side the industry presents itself to each other, looking for new collaborations and partnerships. And often these smart cities, like we see here, a booth from Busan in South Korea, they establish certain test beds in order to give the industry the opportunity to try out their technology on a city scale level. And like these research projects that they then do together are presented there, which I found quite interesting. So various of the projects relate to the surveillance and license plate detection, so automatic image recognition. And some of the video surveillance systems that they have installed there, you can also see that you are getting analyzed in a way of are you male or female? What is your approximate age? Are you a stranger, or are you a person that has been here in the last hour? Just also other body functions they can track by image recognition. For example, your pulse and also your body temperature. So live camera feeds or feedback loops like this found interesting to see also. But as we will see later on also, there was several prototypes of recycling strategies like this pneumatic waste collection system that they also start to install here in Bergen, and that we have seen in South Korea quite often also. So the Nordics are presenting themselves also as a collected, collaborative effort. And there are different smart city challenges like in Stockholm, Tampere, Stavanger, Trondheim, and different research projects from different universities or also companies about urban innovation, and partly also to open this up. One way of how we got to work with this project was to create a mapping of the smart world, where we were looking at the production cycle, the life cycle of our smart gadgets, starting from the mining of rare earth minerals in South America and Africa, then towards the production facilities in China, where these gadgets are getting produced, then to places of consumption in the West, and then again recycling strategies in developing countries like in Ghana, where we did one of the artist in residencies, or also in China and Indonesia, where a lot of these electronic gadgets, once they reach their end of life, are in the end getting disposed again. So looking at the internet usage in South Korea and visiting some of the smart city initiatives or scratch cities in South Korea, I just wanted to give a brief overview. So there is an online penetration of more than 90%. It's the highest average internet connection. There is a very high internet usage of over 80%, which is quite big in Asia. And also they have their own messaging services. It's called Kakao. Pretty much everyone is using it. Their messenger is used instead of emailing, but also you have additional different paying options, banking options. You can order taxis through it, have your own maps, and in this very technocratic country, there have been several smart city projects since 2004 that they have been working on. So when interviewing a representative from the Korean Progressive Network Center, he calls himself Patch A, and he says that South Korea presents itself as such a technocratic society with Samsung and LG and a lot of novelties that are created and coming out of this country. But on the other hand, in terms of policies, critics and campaigners see that South Korea is still at a very low level, and in that way socially lagging behind. So from JimboNet, the Korean Progressive Network, they also argue that it's very government and market driven, and this communication technology sector is more focused on the economic development and the economic growth than actually on the people's needs. So what makes South Korea also a very good place for creating these test beds for smart cities is that the society is rather uncritical towards new technology. It's very easy to adapt to new technology without questioning its implications. So in that way, the good part for economy is that they can easily launch a test market and see how people react on it as a user studies in a way. So the research project I initiated was called The Internet of Other People's Things, dealing with the pathologies of a digital world, and was funded by the National Research Foundation of Korea. We were visiting and interviewing several urban planners and city representatives from different smart city initiatives, like here from the Smart City Busan, that also calls themselves the Happy City for happy citizens. In these showrooms, you often see this kind of smart city monitoring devices, or like big screens where you can see different surveillance cameras and then have an overview of which different services are implemented and what you can read out of it in a way. They also show IoT mirrors like this one. So it's a showroom of different technology, mostly designed by Korean companies, that is then implemented in different projects along within the city. So here we also see like a smart lighting system that also acts as a surveillance tool, and this is also used so each lamp can be dimmed independently or separately, and therefore they also try to navigate people through the city by just dimming certain areas and putting more light in other areas, and then observing how people are walking within the city. And quite naturally, in the night, in the evening, you choose the areas that are more lit up, and therefore you can also be more or less streams of people can be pushed in certain directions throughout the city. Part of the research was also a book publication. The book is available on the website that I have here listed. It's open source, so you are able to read it online or also download it for in a digital format for your e-readers or to read offline. Part of the research was also to have an artistic output or creative output of the observations. So for a while we were looking at different surveillance cameras and also saw that there are a lot of surveillance cameras that have default login credentials. So by just looking at the manual, the user manual, you can find the username and the password of these cameras. Sometimes it's not just for one specific type, but for the whole production line of one company that they use the same login credentials. And since South Korea is officially still at war with North Korea, the security and the vulnerability of their technology is always very important in a way, because they are in the end afraid of being attacked and try to stay secure. So this is just a brief diagram of showing how these insecure IP cameras can be abused. In the end, it's never good if someone else knows your username and password. So I don't want to go into more details. Just in general, I want to show more the artistic output that we created. I will show it in a short video here. So here you can see the one screenshot of the video that we had. It's called Panopticities, and it shows a city portrait of the city of Seoul by looking at these insecure IP cameras. So by looking at the cameras that you can access online by knowing these default login credentials, we create a very own view to the city and on a city. And I quickly want to show you also some excerpt of this video.
Congratulations on your purchase of the wireless very nice network camera. The infrared LED provides around-the-clock surveillance regardless of the lighting conditions.
The camera also comes with remote monitoring and motion detection features for a complete and cost-effective home security solution.
This series of IP monitoring product is the integrated IP network camera, which is researched for network video surveillance monitoring.
You can view and manage your camera from anywhere over the internet through the website or through the mobile apps for iOS and Android. You can view your live video feed, take snapshots, set a recording schedule, and more.
This series of IP camera is well suited for home and small businesses, as well as any situation which needs to apply remote network transmission and remote network control. Controlling the camera and managing images are simplified by using the provided web interface across the network utilizing wired or wireless connectivity.
It is suggested that a password be applied to network camera so that only the administrator can configure the network camera.
If basic authentication is selected, the password is sent in place.
Okay, so I think it's possible to get an insight into the video into the view of the city of Seoul through these insecure network cameras. Was one of the research projects to look at this insecure infrastructure that a smart city provides. Okay. So some of the research scope, we were looking at three main things. One was the corporatization of city governance in smart cities, especially in South Korea, since a lot of these technical companies are implementing their products on a city level, they also gain way more influence and power over what is happening in the city. They not just collaborate with the city officials, I think they also become city officials in a way. Then, as a second part, the citizen-sensitive participation in smart cities is always an interesting aspect, since as Patch A from JimboNet also suggested that it's more a tech-driven market, and that often does not focus on the people and their needs actually. And the third part that you have seen with the first video also, the security issues of smart cities and IoT environments in general are always an aspect also to look at. So when we look at the corporatization of city governance in smart cities, then we were looking at Songdo in South Korea. Is the oldest smart city that was started to be built in the 2000s, and is operated by three companies: Gale International, the steel giant Bosco, and the real estate agent Morgan Stanley, with corporations to IBM, Cisco, and LG. And a quote from Townsend I found quite good and fitting to the city of Songdo, that Siemens and Cisco aim to be the electrician and the plumber of a city, and IBM, by providing the routers and the main infrastructure, becomes their choreographers, their superintendent, and Oracle rolled into one. So one of the problems with this implementation of IoT, Internet of Things, in the urban environment, you pathways to technocratic governance and city development. The city becomes corporate, institutionalized, with technological lock-ins. So once you stick to technology provided by IBM or Cisco, it's nearly impossible to change it, because it's implemented on such a deep embedded ground level. Of course, the cities become more hackable through insecurities, and in general like a panoptic environment where everyone gets observed, surveilled, monitored, in order to be more efficient in a way. So that's the view of the observation deck in Songdo, where you see kind of the main center, the Central Park. They have imitated from the Central Park in New York, and several of the skyscraper buildings within the main area. Some aspects that we looked at, I will quickly go through. So right next to the Central Park, we have the Central Park Mall. When we visited the area, you also see that most of the floors are empty. There are not many shops listed there, and this is also because of real estate speculations that it's just very expensive to actually set foot there and open a business. Another aspect that we looked at is the pneumatic waste system that you saw earlier also in the Barcelona Expo, and this was also interesting part to observe, since it also looked like that it's not working very well and there are issues with the automatic suction of this pneumatic waste. So in the end, it was not so easy to get the waste recycled automatically, and it was still done by hand in a very laborious and time-consuming, old-fashioned manner, not the smartest way. Then a second part was this citizen-sensitive participation. So one quote from Eurocities is that there can be no smart city without smart citizens. So as a problem or as a case study to observe is how are citizens involved in these co-design collaborations with private corporations and the public sector to build better cities. There we have a strong different take on this citizen-sensitive participation in Asia and in Europe. In Europe, we see a lot of projects that are much smaller, that are not built from scratch, where new towns are created from scratch, but more like initiatives that are getting implemented into existing city infrastructures, like a public biking system is often considered a smart city project, or different waste systems, how to manage them differently, or implementation of smart lighting or energy efficiency with smart meters and so on. So there is a very different approach in Europe how to implement or how to incorporate the citizen participation than in Asia, where it's more of a top-down decision or collaboration between the government and the private sector. So what could be observed in Songdo in South Korea was also the reclaiming the space by hacking the city. So people, like in these empty slots that were between the skyscrapers, a lot of projects were on hold or not built because of the last financial crisis, 2007-8. So in these empty slots, you could see that citizens start to build or start to use it in their own way. So here we see different gardening projects reappropriating the urban space. There is also another creative output work, the Future Past Still in the Making, it's called, and it specifically deals with these notions of how is the city reused, how are these scratch cities put forward, and in what way are they implemented. So let's have a look. Today, I'm going to talk about our artistic research as we take a closer look on smart city PR material, asking who is planning these cities? How are the future cities imagined? Who are the ideal citizens? And how are smart citizens shaping their living environments? As more and more rural communities continue to urbanize, a sustainable development depends on the successful management of urban growth. People are moving to cities to improve their life quality. As Jürgen Renders outlines in his book 2052, a global forecast for the next 40 years, we will reach the limit of world population by 2040, and through urbanization will experience a decline towards 2050. Still, urban population will grow and we are in need of more cities than we have now. Hence, many countries start building completely new cities from scratch. This has many advantages. New policies can be put in place, workarounds of existing problems such as traffic, energy shortage, or the relocation of existing communities can be avoided. New cities create a seemingly utopian blank slate to tackle challenges such as climate crisis, pollution, overpopulation, and declining natural resources. Governments cooperate with the private sector, who become deeply embedded in planning future smart cities, shaping their identities and providing hardware infrastructure to fulfill modernist urban utopia. According to Saskia Sassen, such a transformation has deep and significant implications for justice, democracy, and rights. Smart city in itself is a fuzzy term. Tech companies such as IBM see it as the manifestation of the Internet of Things, instrumented, interconnected, intelligent. Sensors are used to generate data that can be communicated, integrated, and analyzed to enable some aspects of city life to function more efficient. Network provider Cisco offers digital network architecture, the Cisco DNA, to unlock the urban network full potential to proactively manage communities. In our artwork, Future Past Still in the Making, a multi-channel video installation, we try to further decode the visual and rhetorical language of smartness. So, we are going to look at some material from the installation and discuss it through 4 themes: the city as a final product, sustainability, greenness, and cleanness, the ideal smart citizen, and the citizen that are shaping their living environment. For the Future Past Still in the Making, we collected over 50 PR videos and 3D renderings from scratch city initiatives in Europe, Africa, Middle East, and East Asia. Typically, smart cities are promoted as financial hubs with special zones for residential living, commerce, and industry. It is clearly determined how different spaces will be used, shaping the identities of neighborhoods and the city as a whole. For example, the King Abdullah city in Saudi Arabia offers residential zones that feature a wide range of housing solutions, sustainably designed in a perfect, modern, family-friendly environment for its residents. And each different community offers its own tailored architecture, blending first-class accommodation with the latest technology. In many cases, in order to accomplish imagined massive urban development, governments partner with the private sector to create special economic zones with pro-business policies. Stakeholders in such partnerships are often real estate speculators, energy suppliers, or tech companies who also provide the hardware infrastructure. The cities are also often marketed as gateways with ideal geostrategic position. For example, Songdo in South Korea, that promises a future where we will stand at the center of the world. Or marketed as free economic zone, offering unmatched support and freedom for business. The King Abdullah city wants to establish itself as a hub for world-leading businesses who bring with them their best and brightest talent. The finalized city is a commodified city, where everything is taken care of for the idealized, happy citizen. As in the case of the new capital Zhejiang, happy people sharing happiness in the best global city where everybody dreams to live. To fight the declining population in South Korea, they advertised the city as a family-friendly environment, with the highest fertility rate in the region. Despite the UN Habitat's recommendation to city planners to avoid viewing smart cities as final products, the PR material presents the city as one solution fits all, an international hub, sustainable, green, and clean, happy, safe, and secure. Some central topics of sustainable urban planning is to create a green living environment and to provide alternative modes of transportation to reduce cities' carbon emissions. These issues are also tackled in the promotion material that we reviewed. However, following up on development plans reveal that underdeveloped land often ignores that the project itself damages fragile ecologies or displaces disadvantaged groups. In India, there is a plan to build 100 new smart cities, making them citizen-friendly and sustainable. One of them is Aramavati, promising green open spaces, waterways, enough solar energy to power a fully electric public transportation system, and every major building following sustainable building guidelines. In contrast to this sustainable utopia, environmental campaigners, local farmers, and civil society groups ran petitions against the plan, addressing the environmental damages and the displacement of local farmers this would cause. The World Bank took this protest serious, reinvestigated the local government's commitments, and concluded that the government misrepresents facts, did not involve local communities, and made unrealistic promises to secure the loan. As of September 2019, the World Bank dropped further funding and main constructors withdrew from the project. This is not always the case. South Korean Songdo, with the newly established Lead for Cities, which is short for Leadership in an Energy and Environmental Design, certificate forced over 4,000 fishermen to relocate. And as wetlands were destroyed, a diverse population of endangered water birds, fish, and plants lost their habitat. Songdo's status as a LEED certified city is to some degree dependent on their automated vacuum collection of waste. However, when visiting Songdo, we encountered an obsolete waste disposal system. Standard trash bins were installed, big waste bags fixed on trees appeared in public spaces, waste was recycled manually by elderly people, trash trucks moaned through the city during the nighttime, and the residents are still paying for non-functioning green tech in real estate prices. As visitors in South Korean smart cities, it was made impossible for us to get rid of our trash. We had to take it with us or throw the trash next to the non-functioning bins, where residents' trash was already piling up. Such idiotic encounters disrupt the seamlessness of everyday lives in smart cities and unveil what lies behind the noble words such as sustainability, greenness, and cleanness. What the smart eco-city in a box concept fails to recognize is that the development of a sustainable city is a process that is never finalized. When analyzing the smart city PR material, we were also introduced to the ideal citizens, well-educated internationals who are successful white-collar workers with perfect work-life balance and enough time to consume in nearby malls and to take part in a range of leisure activities. The smart citizen are the sensing nodes of the city, always connected, generating valuable data that is used to predict and control the future behavior. An ideal smart citizen has nothing to hide because a smart citizen is also a surveilled citizen. Under the concept of smart cities, the surveillance industry has found its playground. By becoming a resident of a smart city, one consents to the automated gaze. Hence, we decided to hand over one of our research questions to be answered by machine vision. We were curious to learn how various facial and emotion detection applications would answer the question, who are the smart citizens? Here, ideal citizens are analyzed by 3 different facial recognition applications. When watching it for a while, it becomes easy to imagine that such technologies could be abused in several ways. What is concerning about AI assessing a person's character from their outer appearance is that it lays the basis for scientific racism. With artificial intelligence, we have entered a new era of researchers claiming they are able to recognize, for example, criminal faces or are able to detect gay people. Companies like Faceception are already implementing this type of research when developing surveillance technology. Despite the darker sides of such surveillance, the branding of smart cities links technology and innovation to happiness by, for example, naming cities as the Happy City Sejong or in their happiness agendas as the one from Dubai, stating, as we transform the future of Dubai through smart technology and innovation, we have prioritized happiness as our primary goal. Asking machine vision applications to define who smart citizens are is of course absurd. However, perhaps the goal of being the happiest city on earth and measuring happiness based on appearance is equally absurd. If emotions can be really measured is debatable. However, emotion detection is already applied in AI. For example, South Korea hiring bots evaluating job seekers. In the video, A Perfect Place to Grow, we documented how garden hacking by grandmas and grandpas flourished between the skyscrapers in Songdo. This because building projects were postponed due to various reasons. During our summer lab in Songdo, we visited several of these allotments, learning that urban farming in those places is illegal. As we were filming one of the green spaces, where a hospital was supposed to be built, the gardener, an elderly man, invited us to taste some of his sesame plants and chilies. This felt like the smartest part of the city: local food, green spaces, in sustainable use by its citizens. When rather invisible elderly smart citizens claim their presence in the city through illegal farming, this becomes a political act, as they claim rights to the city rather than protection of property. Even if smart cities are promoted as final products, a city will always be incomplete, an ongoing changing process that will never finalize. Hence, the actual citizens, even if considered powerless against corporations and government, will find ways to shape the city. In this case, the culture of gardening by elderly Koreans is shaping the city, both by claiming private property and repurposing the space. In the complexity and incompleteness of a city, Saskia Sassen sees the capacity of cities to outlive far more powerful but formal and closed systems, such as governments, kings, and corporations. Here also lies the possibility of making the urban, the political, the civic a history. In other words, the possibility to shape the city. All in all, Future Past Still in the Making demonstrates how a smart city utopia are never realized, and yet they are important in stimulating change. Furthermore, as the cities are populated by real citizens, they start to shape the city. Hence, the city evolves through an ongoing changing process and will never be finalized. And we will see a short smart city mashup from the installation.
This land was once ocean. The ocean became land, a city in harmony with people. One day,
When it's complete, King Abdullah Port,
Amaravati,
Masdar City,
Sejong,
Songdo,
a city built entirely from scratch in South Korea.
for tomorrow's Saudi Arabia.
Global gateway into Africa.
the most distinctive city in the world.
This ambitious project.
Which will become the tourist center of the world.
an investment and a free zone.
A self-sufficient city.
and sustainable city of tomorrow.
Perfect modern, family-friendly environment. The perfect location for new educational institutions.
There will be 200 million square meters of accommodation and more than 2 million workplaces in all activity areas.
Together, we are taking another step toward the future.
The future is smart.
In the future, we will stand at the center of the world, a beacon of hope and promise. People are now living in this city. Their hopes for the future are great.
We are bringing the power of the Internet of Things to make cities smarter.
Is the people's capital. At the forefront of a nation's mission and a beacon to the rest of the world.
A European city of the future. Become a resident.
Yeah, so coming back to the installation. I briefly still want to mention the installation setup. So in the end, it should resemble a construction fence where a construction banner is mounted and where you can see different screens. Each screen resembles one of the videos that I was talking about. So you have here again a brief overview of the different cities that we were looking at. In the end, it was PR material from really a lot of companies and a lot of city initiatives that we were looking at. And by meshing them up, analyzing them, also looking at what is their language, what is their rhetorical things that they point out, also the different 3D visualizations, found very interesting to see how similar they are in the end. And yeah, all of them are scratch cities, newtown projects that are currently built or in production or planned to be built. And yeah, the 4 channels that I was talking about also, perfect place to grow, the observations of the Sondo Smart City visits. Then there is a own time-lapse of scratch cities that you saw in the beginning also, very slow-paced transitions of satellite images that show how these newtown projects are developing over the years. Then the decoding of the smart city PR material as a main video that takes around good 10 minutes to watch, and then the surveillance video of smart citizens, where we were feeding the PR material to image recognition software in order to see how are these faces analyzed and what is interpreted into them. Anyway. Exactly. I see an image. Yeah, so besides the to show some projects from the book publication, to briefly mention, we were looking at smart citizen initiatives that we find in Japan and South Korea. So this one, for example, has its roots in Japan. It's a community-based Geiger counter that was initiated after the Fukushima incident, and that where like citizens start to build their own Geiger counters to measure the radiation levels, since also the government was providing the general public with false information or with seldomly updated information about the radiation levels after the Fukushima incident. Other projects from South Korea include the Yellow Dust Map, also a citizen grassroots initiative where activists create own yellow dust maps, measure the pollution within the cities, and try to share the information with other communities. From the government, you often just have one sensor per district, since the districts can be very large. This is often way too less, not enough to provide a detailed overview over what the pollution levels are. So it's quite important that communities also build their own sensors and make a more denser mesh of sensors within the city. Also by the government, you just see visualizations of pollution from a very own perspective. So on the left side, you see the Seoul Tower, and the Seoul Tower is lit up in the evening in different colors. And you might think that like red means something to be alert of, and blue means that the air is good. But in the end, they just use different colors to present the city or this main symbol of the city in different ways. One of them means that the air is clean, but the others, which is the blue one, the others just mean that, yeah, it's a good day to go out and you should go out and embrace nature. And it's not used in a way to give people a feeling of how good or bad the air pollution is. It's actually just showing when it's good or when it's good to go out and embrace nature. So not a very clear visualization of the air quality. We were collaborating with a activist group called Unmake Lab. It's a maker, artist, and activist community in Seoul, and they were also focusing on the smart trash bins in smart cities, and did several exhibitions and publications in this like kind of scenes in this direction also. And some projects briefly to mention from the book is, for example, the work Lauren by Lauren McCarthy. It's a IoT setup that she created and installed by different people as an art of a performance. And I'm reading from the interview that we did with her also some text. So, since January, I have been attempting to become a human version of Amazon Alexa, a voice-activated AI system for people in their own homes. The project is called Lauren. Anyone can visit getlauren.com to sign up. The process begins with an installation of a series of custom network devices that include cameras, microphones, switches, door locks, and so on. In the end, different IoT devices. For 3 days, I remotely watch over the person 24/7 and control all aspects of their home. I attempt to be better than an AI because I can understand them as a person and anticipate their needs. The Lauren experience is ultimately about presence. Despite my lack of tricks, they are very aware that I am there and aware of their own presence too. I am trying to highlight this trait we are making for these surveillance smart devices. We give access to all our data and live camera feeds. But for what? While designing the project, I spent a lot of time thinking about the question, if I were an AI, what would I be like? The point of this project is not to impose a point of view, but to give viewers a space to form their own. Immersed in the system, in the comfort of their homes, people are able to engage with these tensions. A second work that I briefly want to mention is the work Monitor by Luke Mann. It's also a website, so you can access it online and experience it yourself. So the website is basically showing a smartphone screen, and on this screen you get different notifications from your IoT devices in your smart home, in the smart city that you live in. It's related to a real life incident that happened in 2015. On a Saturday night, James Bates invited a few of his friends around to watch football and for some drinks. But the next morning, Bates called the emergency number 911, and police arrived at the house to find one of his friends, Victor Collins, dead in the backyard. Bates was known to have several smart home devices, including a Nest thermostat or an alarm system and a wireless weather monitoring system. But the devices that most interested the police department was the Amazon Echo, the smart loudspeaker. So they wanted to know what kind of conversations and activities did this device log on the evening of question. So the police did not get access to the device. Amazon was not releasing the constant audio feed that these devices are surveilling and monitoring. But for the artist, he was not limited by this fact, but he wanted also to speculate about what could have happened on this evening. What could this smart device been listening to? So on the website, you always see these different notifications from the smart garage door, or from a drink shaker, or from the water reader, or your TV screen. And by looking at these notifications that are related to the time, it kind of tells a narrative out of the perspectives of these smart log files, smart devices, in a way. So an interesting project that I would recommend you also to actively try out. The last project I quickly want to mention is a workshop tool that is done by the Design Friction Lab from France. And they are a group of game designers and interventionists who try to speculate on the smart city and its infrastructures from various perspectives. So they also try to think in directions of what is not just with the smart citizens in the future cities, but also what happens to the animals who live in a smart city. Are they producing data that is interpreted in a wrong way, or are they kind of deleted out of this whole monitoring process? And do we actually have to hide as an animal in order to opt out of this whole monitoring, in a way? So yeah, this was the last project I wanted to mention briefly. I hope that you are interested to further look at the different other projects that you find in the book. It's available online. And I would now still like to have a discussion with you. So if you have questions to the projects that I have shown you, or comments in general to the smart homes or smart cities, then I would post a Jitsi room link in the chat window, and in a couple of minutes after a short break, I would be happy to still meet there with you and also discuss on these issues, maybe have some comments from you or some questions, and take this further. So thank you very much for to all of you, and I will post the Jitsi room in the chat window.